Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. Mostly. Probably. Substantially. Yeah, so just another week, I'm afraid, of frustration. Just the objective of trying to communicate with people and, just these basic ideas of, applying some sort of logic, some objective thought to any subjects actually, and people don't like to do that. Compile facts and then sort of analyze the facts. Just not too interesting. Um, so they just like some sort of cliche to say, "Come save the day," like coming to save the day, like that actually happens, or But it's just there's just silver lining, happily ever after. It's God's will. It's the alternative is horrid draconian gulag communism. Therefore we must embrace imbecility. That kind of argument. Um, and it's just out there about every subject. It's just there's you know I don't know. So anyway, I did a couple of economic videos during the week, and it is curious. I mean, some people, you know, enthusiastic. you know, it's either you love it or hate it, and it just kind of matches the politics. You're either Trump or something not Trump. Um, you don't care what it is. Dog shit is better than. And that's just the truth. And people keep making rationalizations that things would be much worse if Hillary was in control. No, they wouldn't. But anyway, it's just, no, that's stupid. So, so I guess that politics it gets into it, so you can't have a conversation in any kind of current context about any kind of subject without that bleeding into it. And, this old notion that Republicans or whatever conservatives gave a shit about things like balanced budgets or any of that crap. It really was just kind of a lie, because all they really cared about is what they could engineer into, profit, some sort of capital gain, some sort of. There used to be a word for it, and I can't remember. About inadvertent profit, like inflation or something, where you make money even though you're supposed to lose money, that backwards stepping into it, um, because of some, something broken in the system. So anyway, I don't really want to do that. I'm not going to do economics, so I guess I've already turned some people off by implying that I would. Um, just talking about the idea of the conversation and how it gets tainted with the periphery issues that really aren't the main subject, and the main subject was sort of the obvious one that you know deficit spending by a government is generational theft. I mean, there's just no way to break the obvious analogies and metaphors. It's like the inheritance thing. You can say to somebody, look, it's like the Olympics, or it's like any other event in life where we say earn should have everything to do with it, and we try to make deserve have everything to do with it, and then you say, no, over here, the most important game, survival, economic survival, no, earning shouldn't have anything to do with that. It's just completely upside down and retarded. There's no counter argument to that simple analogy that clearly you have completely double standards, and apparently this word fairness and deserve, those words don't mean shit to you, because when it really counts, they don't mean shit to you. And it's the same thing with a simple argument that deficit spending is intrinsically and fundamentally stupid. I mean, it is stealing from your kids. It's short-term gain, long-term pain. Uh, because we don't ever pay off deficits, and we know that. There's no good time to pay it off. Nobody wants to ever, 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 ever take the medicine if they can force their kids to take the medicine. And that's just the truth. People just push it off to somebody else. It's somebody else's problem. Because they're just intrinsically, I guess, that evil. that they never can recognize a principle, even if it means that yes, they can't have everything they want now, um, and recognize that fact. And clearly there's some liberals who think you can have free everything and somehow everything works out okay, and you can pay people to have kids they can't even raise to be human beings because they're both working crappy jobs, and their kid's not going to get raised by anybody who's high IQs or anything. There's not going to be any. It's going to be the cheap version of kid raising, not the premium version, and you're not likely to get much as a product. But they want it. They say, their empathy gets to make them completely impractical and illogical. And on the other side, it's just this evil gluttony, that obviously just destroys all capacity to do logic. I don't see anything wrong with it because it doesn't hurt me. And if good for me, it must be good for the entire universe. And they can't think any further than that. So anyway, but these are just basic logical subjects. So, you think in the context of anti-nihilism. So there's this guy who's posted this stuff on Reddit, I guess. I don't do the other media. And the good news is that this is evidence that other people can compose arguments and do something with them, and so it's not all dependent on me somehow. So these people who think I have to do everything, now there's some evidence that other people can do something meaningful and substantial. So anyway, post these different little comments on little variants on the arguments that can be made. And so I'll post a link to this one anyway, The Problem it's called. It's just a simple definition of the, we make the problem. It doesn't really say what I would say, which is, and then we clean up half of it and call it a good day's work. So we left half the mess behind every day, and we think that we're winning because, we cleaned up half the mess we made. So you got to give us credit, right? We earned our allowance, so to speak. Even though there's, can't add up, and that's sort of like deficit spending doesn't add up because it's infinite interest. So you kind of know if you bought stuff on a credit card and you paid for it forever and ever, in terms of you paid a rental fee forever, you'd know, I'm not winning. I'm going to pay 50 million times more, times what the thing is worth over time. I'm going to end up paying an insane amount of money for it. Something that said $50, and I'm going to end up paying $500,000 because I'm never not going to pay for it. I'm just going to rent it. And obviously, from the landlord's perspective, this makes sense. I would just argue that, and they're able to convince the common morons to, march along because they'll say something like the death tax, or money was already taxed once when it wasn't, any more than anybody else's salary was taxed more than once. Of course, all money is taxed through the system. It's but gain is gain, and you're taxing the gains. And it's just this pretending like somehow it's already been done. No, it hasn't already been done. The income, the new money, the profit hasn't been taxed. Well, anyway, I don't want to get into specific arguments, but there's no point. They're really simple, and people are way too prejudiced in their perspective. They just want to say it's all good. There never was it's like any of these subjects. There's no such thing as a bad feminist. There's no such thing as a wacky transvestite. There's no such thing as a fucking silly person. And yeah, there are such things. And there's a point where you have to say, no, you went too far there. That's illogical and stupid. So, so now you have a bunch of conservatives, because it's to their advantage, rationalizing deficit spending. Now it's investment now, and huge gains in the future. Even though logically, it can't be gaining. You're going to be losing, because renters lose. They don't win. Anyway, I mean, renting sucks. You don't want to do it if you can avoid it. So, that's in this context of the strangeness of having arguments with people and their personal idiosyncrasies and stuff too that also gets in the way. Just relating sort of to the modern mystic who, it does two subjects essentially: this free will brain thing and this economic thing. And he used to be somewhat sensible, you'd say, on these subjects, but he has gotten quite insensible because he's taken these, he's got these little pieces of broken logic, and in one sense he has, in the big picture philosophy sense, he gets the fact that we have a mechanical brain, that it's programmed by our environmental circumstances, that our environmental circumstances are programmed by a whole bunch of other causes and effects, and that what will happen, in a sense, is already dictated. But the fact is while it's happening, this also happens. People make videos. So he sits there and he makes videos making arguments, and at the same time says arguments are futile. Arguments can't change anything, in the sense of they're not part of our evolution. So thinking, he's almost saying, and processing in the environment of what you hear other people saying, that somehow all of that stuff doesn't decide whether, the Weeble wobbles left or the Weeble wobbles right. And that's just so fundamentally illogical to say that all circumstances create only one outcome, when clearly different circumstances create different outcomes. And we're all participating in being a circumstance. We're a cause for a future effect. And while we're causing, we can feel, at minimum, I mean, you can logically understand it, but you can also feel it happening, where the balance is being decided inside your head of what you're going to be. And you can see what the effect of, swinging too far this way or going too far that way, you can see how things fall off the rails and it isn't going to work, and it's, but we're all part of it. And so every argument we make is, theoretically, fundamentally important in some way or another. You can't know what butterfly is going to, create the tornado. You just, and because we can't know, we have to recognize that, well, maybe I have to change the record I'm playing, because, I'm doing the not paying any attention thing, or I'm doing the I only gave it casual thought thing, and maybe I got to do better than that. I got to do more than that. So anyway, so people get motivated. They write stuff and they say things, and they do it because that's how you do this momentum thing. It's how you get balls rolling. It's how you cause avalanches. And it's just, like I said, I'm just pointing out the irony of people who use this as an excuse, this idea that what avalanche will happen has essentially already been decided by the current circumstances. But we as players can't know. It's this whole war argument. Quite obviously, if you can't assume, back in the World War II days, you couldn't just say, my contribution is irrelevant. I will not help win the war, therefore I won't fight in the war. Or you can't just say, well, I know we're going to win. And everybody says that, and then there's no way you could possibly win. If everybody says, I know we're going to win, therefore I don't have to do anything. I don't have to play a critical role. I don't have to break my leg, for the cause. And you know that in any adventure, baseball, soccer, whatever, if all the players are saying, I'm not going to take one for the team, and I'm not going to do my best because I know we're going to win anyway, you know, then you know you're not going to win. If that's the team you put on the field is a bunch of feudalists who think they know the answer already. You know, they somehow have figured out that they don't have to do anything, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and they couldn't have stopped it, and they couldn't have done anything, and they already know this for a fact somehow. When of course they don't. And so the only salvation the future has, any protection it has, is the fact that people have this very conversation and say, hey, what about the future? You know, the future's doomed if you don't fix it now. If everybody thinks the future's going to be okay, oh, it'll be okay, they'll work it out. You know, it's the same thing as saying, I don't have to defeat Hitler. And, then Hitler wins. And so people have to have the conversation and say, well, deficit spending is compromising the choices the future will have. Instead of being able to do something to fix when they hit a downturn, they're not going to have any weapons. They're going to have reverse weapons. All you've given them is a bunch of guns that shoot the guy who pulls the trigger. You haven't given them any weapons that point in the right direction. You've given them no protection from the bar and the other stuff coming to get them. And the only thing, like I said, the only protection the future has is people now have to have conversation about that avalanche that's going to, you know, crush them, and we're going to instead make the other avalanche happen where it doesn't cause any harm. You know, something like that. We're going to be a meme and a virus that the earth catches, and it's going to change things, and it won't happen the way it could have happened if everybody sat around being feudalistic or fatalistic or conveniently disinterested, because they assume you know, they don't have to jump on any grenades to save the day. They already know that somehow. Their sacrifice is unnecessary. So anyway, it's just sort of a basic logical argument that you know what success looks like in terms of the pre-existing circumstances. And the pre-existing circumstances for success for a baseball team or a football team or whatever is that the players think it matters, and they're really feeling the pressure to maximize their role, and that's the team that wins. Okay, it's the people who are worried and the ones who are intensely concerned with how they can maximize their performance and make this thing spin right and go right, get the best out of themselves. But those are the guys that are going to win, you know, 9 out of 10 times, so to speak. The people sitting back just saying, I don't have to do anything, I'm not important, I'll just collect my paycheck, I don't want to be doing no extras, I don't want to, you know, do any extra reps, you know, I don't want to have to put in any investment. Well, you know, that's the team that ain't going to hit the home run. They're, you know, the ball going to come a little bit short. It's not going to make it over the fence and all that kind of crap, to use the metaphors. So it is an interesting conversation. So you can take this another place, this whole idea of the inevitability thing, and have a conversation about what evolution is. So another one of the posts this guy posted, the Pearl guy, was you know, the evolution of just the logic and intelligence, that it has a natural conclusion. You know, that you start off really dumb and you evolve into something smart, and that's what humans are sort of doing by acquiring knowledge and information. And there's a sort of predictability to the course it takes, and you can sort of see, you know, you figure out how to fly in airplanes and you do different things. You say those are all logically places we'd eventually hit. You know, those are dots on the page that we would get to. It'd be very hard to avoid any kind of evolution that wouldn't include walking on those particular stairs. And to some extent, you can say that if intelligence is allowed to do what it should do, which is become better at processing, better at distinguishing between bad information and good information, that inevitably it would figure out how it's being gamed in this whole consciousness play that we're playing out. And it's a zero-sum game that you're not going to win anything. You're just going to try to minimize losses. And the best way to minimize losses is not to create a losser. Don't make the machine that loses. Don't make the sentient organism. Because it's all a delusion of accomplishment. Because its existence really can't serve any function. It can't create any honest positives. They're all dishonest positives of, oh, thank God I'm not poor. Oh, thank God I'm not fat and ugly. Oh, thank God I'm not blah, blah, blah. It's all being grateful for or feeling proud of things you had absolutely nothing to do with as accomplishments or as victories. And they're completely illusionary in the sense that they're just arbitrarily chosen as victories. You know, I have blue eyes, I win. Something silly like that. So yes, so we can all understand that. Oh yeah, well it seems logical that's going to happen because it's like flying in the airplane. It's just you're saying how could they miss the obvious that we're just consciousness is being manipulated by a bunch of natural ambitions and desires, and we pay a huge price for that sense of kind of a competition, you know. So it's sort of like looking at the Olympics, and you could analyze it and say, what's the net balance of this thing? Take the silly fans out of it. What does it do? You know, it creates one happy person in the end, right? The gold guy. The silver guy ain't going to be too happy, generally speaking, and the bronze guy is going to be pretty depressed, generally speaking. And look at all the carnage. Look at all the failure it creates. So for this little tiny bit of success, it creates just so much failure. So many kids with little dreams in their head of winning, and so many people beaten by stupid circumstances. You know, they twist their ankle somewhere or something, and that's the end of their career after years of training. I mean, just huge losses for this little tiny bit of somebody feeling self-satisfied. I have accomplished. And then 3 weeks later, the whole shine and glitter wears off, and he's like, well, now what? And starts drinking or something. So it's just so bad when you look at the native psychology, and that you're fighting for levels of failure. You're not fighting for any kind of level of victory. You're just treading the quicksand, and you feel good about yourself because you say, oh, I'm doing better than those other assholes. But that's all you've got, really. You're just treading quicksand. And it's a stupid thing to make something do. It's a stupid thing to engineer something to tread quicksand. Here's a gift. Start swimming. And it's more like sewage than quicksand, but same difference in a lot of ways. So, yeah. So we're sitting here in this place in human history where we have lots of facts and lots of information, but there's lots of people that are just so silly, and they just don't have any respect for facts and information, and they really want the facts to point in directions. They want to go to singularities, or they want to have dinner with some aliens, or there's all kinds of this wishful thinking and daydreaming about what we're doing here. They don't want to recognize the real, maze of bugs squirming thing. They don't want to see us for what we are. So then they have this fantasy about what what we, this just a delusion about the fact that we're not some sort of monster, that we're all some sort of wonderful creation or some whatever it is. But clearly that bias just makes the evolution of the intelligence just breaks it entirely, because none of the facts are added and respected. They're just used. Anything that gives a slight indication of a justification is jumped on. So it's, I've used analogies of jumping the evidence in the physics argument, that the human race just jumps the evidence. You get a little tiny bit of evidence and it gives them an excuse to put the cart way ahead of the horses, and so they're not following the facts. They're just using facts circumstantially to create the cheapest of stepping stones to the fantasy delusion that they wish to write on humanity's wall and say this is what we are. There's probably better metaphors for it, but clearly they're looking to the cloud, so to speak, and they're pretending they're doing fact analysis. But clearly the facts are just not relevant. They're just running to a delusion. And so that's not really an evolution of intelligence. That's just an evolution of human psychology. So these are sort of the competing interest, is what's going to win, logic or the kind of idiocracy notion of just being stupid human, Homer Simpson kind of depth, where there's no fair analysis of anything important, because fair analysis means you don't get what you want. You don't get this fake notion of a free lunch for the rich or for the poor. Because apparently there's people who just love rich people. I don't really understand it. I mean, I'm always going to root for the underdog, and so I mean, I'll cut some poor people a break, because you say, they're underdogs. They were usually born under a dog, pretty much. Some of them, and yeah, you sort of got to say, I root for them getting some acknowledgement of how hard the road is they've walked, compared to the people in tutus walking up on the tightrope and pretending how accomplished they are, when they have a net 2 feet below them, So lots of good metaphors, and totally ignored by people again. So the point that I'm sort of making is that this intelligence evolution unfortunately has to happen, through something besides just intelligent arguments, it seems. You can't just logically say, clearly it's generational theft, okay? when you spend the money now, put it on a credit card, and then shove the credit card, the maxed out credit card, and you shove that in your kid's pocket. Now anybody can understand that's not a loving parent. Anybody. You just don't have to be any kind of big-brained, doing all kinds of fancy analysis. You can understand, especially if, what you spent the money on wasn't to blow up an asteroid that was going to hit the Earth. If you borrow money to make a asteroid blowing up gun, well, then you could the kid could understand, oh, okay, you saved my life, and you're just saying you have to pay for having your life saved. Okay, I can sort of get that. But we know that's not what the parents are doing. They're not putting, oh, we built great infrastructure, we built you a Hoover Dam, and you get, almost free electricity for life, and there's nothing. We didn't max the card out on buying the kid stuff, on future investment. I mean, we maxed the card out on tax cuts for the rich, more money to play in the the markets, more gambling time, a trip to Las Vegas. So that's what we're spent the money on, and that can't be. You can't justify throwing that burden on your kids. I had a birthday party, and and I made my kids pay for it. That's all. I mean, you got to be able to say, yes, I can understand. That's got to be wrong. Can't possibly be in the realm of the right thing to do for your children. So, anyway, so it's just, you're just saying, look, this is just so fundamental, and for people who are really intelligent to find rationalizations for it, just silly excuses, and and they'll never deal with the analogy. Like I said, I mean, the analogy for inheritance is just so obvious that in nothing that human beings control do we say fairness doesn't matter and deserve doesn't matter. We're almost obsessed with it mattering. We take it personally if somebody cheats at the Olympics almost. I mean, this is a high crime. We care. And yet, in this most important contest, you say it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just so obviously illogical. It's so obviously hypocrisy and duplicity to say that you're not even going to try. And that's what they do, right? They say things like, well, you can't fix the problem. They had to deregulate the banks. No, they didn't. That was just a dopey Republican idea. We get to make more money because we can create more competition in the game the market industry. We'll get more clever people to figure out how to make more clever junk bonds that we can buy and stuff. It was just trying to cut their rates. The more people you let produce the product, then the cheaper the product gets. So they just wanted the product to get cheaper. And they didn't care that it's the difference between having a chef that knows what salmonella is and having a chef who doesn't. And a big mistake. And again, they wouldn't do it if it was about food, or if it was about how well their house is going to be built. If it was about something that could affect them personally, they wouldn't be so reckless. But because it's the price is likely to be paid by somebody else, it's okay. The poor, the disenfranchised, throw them under the bus for their comfort. So anyway, I'm not trying to say arguments aren't important. I'm obviously saying kind of the exact opposite, that this is all we have, is our capacity to communicate with each other. I'm just saying that we're in a stage of human development where the rules of, there's just this hunk of space where the old rules of progressive enlightenment, okay, in the sense that when I was a kid in like the 60s, you sort of got the feeling that religion was on the way out. That it was, and then Carl Sagan came along, and it just seemed so like, it seemed this trend was just so, a few days from now, everybody's going to be an atheist. And it's just so ironic how that didn't happen, and it's going the opposite way. Merely because most of the kids are being raised by religious kooks. There's no balance in who's maturating children, who has children. Idiots have kids, and religious people are idiots. And that's a huge problem. That's a huge generator of idiocracy, in the sense that you have this engine that's creating young people who are really stupid, because they've been brainwashed by morons. Parented by idiots. Now, there's probably some genetic component to that also, which is not helpful. I've never taken genetic intelligence very seriously. I don't think it's necessary. You don't have to be very smart to figure out most of this. This stuff is sort of obvious. The whole idea of maxing out a credit card and putting it in your kid's pocket. You really don't need a huge IQ to figure out that something's wrong with that. So, there's more at play here than um, people are too physically stupid, to get it. That's not the problem. It's just that they're too emotionally um, dependent and that's probably a better word, perverse. Um, they're sick, emotionally sick, um, and so all they see is this competition. All they see is the goal, and they can't recognize the unacceptable prices for getting where they want to get. Um, they're just too ignorant of recognizing anything like big pictures and objective perspectives and um, analysis that goes beyond what's in it for me. I mean, what's in it for me is really, that's a really stupid organism's perspective. It's really easy to do that math in some sense. Obviously, it brings up the problem of somebody who there's lots of decisions you make in your life that are incredibly dumb, like high risk, very low reward, where for the rest of your life you have an injury or something you have to live with because of some stupid thing you did, and the recklessness, you're not paying attention while you're driving, and you go out and drink and drive, something really dumb, and you pay for it for a decade, that kind of thing. There's lots of ways you can, even when you're at just what's in it for me, or you can sell your future self to hell, because you want something immediately, today, and you're not willing to wait 5 days or 10 days. You're not willing to save the money to make the honest purchase, and so you'll force your future self to keep paying for it later. So there's all kinds of layers to this intelligence things in terms of understanding it on a living your own personal life even intelligently can be a lesson, in the sense that you can observe that as a kid you can you can figure, like, to me it occurred to me at some point in my childhood, the idea of what recklessness was, and the fact that you could make mistakes now that you'll have to pay for later, and vice versa, that you can make small investments now that'll have big rewards in the future. And it's pretty hard as a kid to live up, I mean, I guess it depends on when you're growing up, of course. I mean, I didn't have much hope for the world in general, and so I didn't have very high expectations about being a participant for any substantial amount of time. I mean, I never figured on living to be an old 30-year-old, and that seemed too old. Those people already seemed too clueless, living this, whatever that is, the slavery to the corporation and this drony life. I mean, I perceived my parents' life as some sort of horror. Like, oh God, I don't want that to happen to me. It just didn't, not that they were in any way appeared to be in pain. It just seemed like such an empty existence that I was just, if that's what we're living for, this pickety fence bullshit, I'm not interested. That kind of feeling. It just didn't look like a game worth playing. So, in spite of seeing things, landing on the moon and different things the human race did that seemed, well, that's kind of good. The overall picture still looked grisly. Just full of it seemed to be just made out of bullshit. So much dishonest bullshit. So anyway, so So even if you're not somebody who does a great deal of philosophy about the whole world and what's at balance, you can see it in your own, in just doing the what's in it for me analysis. You can recognize there's a difference between you now and you 10 years from now, and that if you assume that your 10 years from now person is going to exist, you really don't want to chew his nuts off. I mean, you really don't want to do something that's going to put him in a bad position. And so you can just take that little simple logic that you're going to recognize being even a selfish asshole and broaden it to the bigger picture, that that's how life is played here on Earth. You know, for your Western lifestyle, there's the Eastern drudgery. And then for the human progress, there is the animal exploitation. And for the wonder of conscious experience, you know, there's this horrible attrition where nature kills, it mass murders children. I mean, it kills most of the things it kills while there are children. It's just a fact. And it does it cruelly and horribly. Little baby elephants eaten alive and such. And that's the price you're paying for your wonder at, oh, look how spectacular it is that we're doing these little silly calculations in our head and pretending we're winning and, you know, running with our little pink balloons. Yeah, just full of love. That's an insane price being paid for it. It's the retard with the balloon. You know that's a lie. That most of the time the retard is crying. Most retards aren't happy. They're struggling. They're frustrated. If you spend any time around them, you kind of get it. It's simple things confuse and irritate. So ignorance isn't really bliss, because ignorance gets, you know, things hurt you easier, and you end up compromising your future easier. Ignorance has a price. It degrades your pragmatic performance, your ability to recognize what it takes to be a winner, what it takes to win, and so you're more likely to lose. And it's a fact. Real cigarettes. See, so you know, just another example that we can't get. You can't not be selfish. You can't not be a bit of a glutton. I don't think. I mean, I haven't met anybody who's able to step beyond all of the personal physiological reactions that just keep screaming, hungry, horny, you know, all that kind of stuff. I want something. I want whatever your particular definition is of a good enough accomplishment. I want to win some games I'm playing. I'm invested in some games and I want to win them. And it's really hard to not be that human organism, to not be competitive, to not have this personal struggle sense of, you know, feeling accomplished. Yeah, so, and the people who don't have it, or have some, you know, something's in their way, you know, those are the people that become fatalists and alcoholics and, you know, drown in some their disinvestment. And yet they'll still, though, defend the game overall for some, because it's probably because they've invested in it, because they've had kids, and so therefore they have to say, well, yeah, it was the right thing to do, even though they know it's the wrong thing to do. But they have to say it's the right thing to do because they can't accept any more failure. They can't accept having to recognize how bad a game they played. and how they squandered whatever capacity they had to do the world any good. And yet they'll preach, to others about how they're wasting their lives. Something that's occurred to me about the modern mystic is, I remember the Matt Siegel, forgot what his name was. Yeah, I forgot. It's been so long since he was human. But anyway, I remember the mystic giving him a whole speech about just, pissing away his life on these, this fairy tale bullshit, and he should become a doctor or doing something reasonable with his intelligence. And it's just kind of funny, and it seems always kind of ironic when I think about it, because the mystic's life is just a testament to waste. Anything valuable he could have contributed as an intelligence on Earth, he's just, did it polishing yachts. So what? It takes an intelligent person to think that's an accomplishment. I was a very good yacht polisher. Yes, I knew exactly how to polish it just right. I mean, that's just pitiful. Yeah, very pitiful. So anyway, I guess I've probably done enough with this general subject of, yes, I think intelligence will finally get, I think it has to inevitably have the conversation about how it's psychology, and it's all psychology, and it's not winning psychology. It's the psychology of a Tyrannosaurus. It's a psychology of a tick. It's a psychology of a parasite. It's not an admirable psychology that drives us, and that's just a fact. And that you have to make the needy thing before anything can have value. The need has to come first, and there's just no reason to create it. It is a zero sum. It can't ever run a profit. This can only be a bad credit card game. It'll never be honest financing. You'll never earn any of your comfort, and the victims will never deserve what you impose on them. It just can't be played by a thinking thing, a smart animal sitting in the maze, seeing how the maze game works, that it's all just based on competition. So it's watching the rats rip each other to pieces. There's no intelligence that could say, oh, I see that, and now I'm going to jump in and play. No, they're going to walk out. They're going to walk away and say, this isn't a game for anything with a brain. This is a game for bugs. And you can say, kind of obviously, I don't have all of this brain stuff, and I didn't spend, decades even acquiring knowledge and how to use it and have it function properly, to waste it playing a drooling game. That's just fucking idiotic. So yes, intelligence would have to evolve to this conversation, a recognition of how the fundamental mechanism is corrupt and broken. It just has to do with a molecule getting replicated. It's just using us as the demonstration models to be, as the test instruments, to be blown up, to be burned, to be, cast into the abyss, to be thrown away, to be damaged and then destroyed. And that's all we're here for, is to test a arrangement of DNA. It's idiotic on its face. There's no underlying good purpose, and that will be recognized by intelligence. But will intelligence hit a brick wall where the idiocracy, the what's in it for me's, will never let it go past its utility? So intelligence will just be about, make me a pinker balloon. It'll never analyze wanting pink balloon. It'll just say, use intelligence to make the pink pinker. Give me more. And it'll never analyze, never get to the conversation about, is there any more to get? Is there any reason to think mooring is smart? And so I guess if there's a possibility, I tend to think it can't happen just because I think there's too many mechanical systems that end up demonstrating the failure. Too many examples of the, you know, maxing out the credit card and putting it in your kid's pocket. Too many examples of the, if deserve doesn't have something to do with it, then why do you think deserve should have something to do with it in all these other cases? Why is it important in all these other circumstances if it doesn't matter? Or if somehow we don't have the power, when of course we do, because we make it happen in these other circumstances. We make asserted efforts. But that just reminds me of another corruption, right? Because that's, you know, both parties say something about responsible immigration or blah 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 or some kind of bullshit, but it's clear that they don't want, it's like gun control, they don't want to control it because they don't allow the system to do that. They don't allow us to be monitored in any way. We can't even have a reliable Social Security number. I mean, that's how bad the system is. That's how broken they've made it and left it, is to make sure that crazy people get guns. You know, because there's no communication between one thing and another thing. When they know the information's there, and they just don't allow it to mean anything. So I mean, the idea that, you know, you can fix immigration by just limiting how many jobs the immigrants can take, and you can do that with Social Security numbers. So what's complicated? There's nothing complicated here. And so they've made it broken deliberately. So it's not like you have to build walls, you know, to fix it. That's just nonsense, and they don't intend to do that anyway. But they created the brokenness, and then they pretend like, I'm going to fix this for you, but they're not going to fix it. It's obvious they're not going to fix it because the fix is so obviously easy. You know, if illegals can't work here, they won't come here. It's just that obvious. And you can stop them from working here with really simple laws that mostly already exist. You know, that you can't work without registering, essentially, to work, because you have to pay your Social Security taxes and all that crap. So you have to be a registered worker. So why have we broken work registrations? Well, we've done it so they can pretend that they want to fix something that they don't want to really fix. Anyway, didn't want to get on. I mean, the political subjects just taint everything. But I can't help but drag it in sometimes, in the sense that it was such an obviously bad choice. You know, this direction America has decided to take, it just makes the problem so much bigger to fix in the future. It's just really bad. But anyway, it's just more of a deficit to climb out of in many ways. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So, until the next time, and such, so forth and whatnot. I am going to try to get more interactive here and do more stuff. There's a lot of things I'm doing. You know, so I got to do less things. And I keep saying I'm going to do less things, but I'm not going to do less things. So I got to do this thing better. Look, the point is, I'm acknowledging I got to do better. So I'm acknowledging it. That's the first step. Now, maybe I'll weasel out of all the other steps, but I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure I won't. This is the fact that I keep harping on it, keep nagging myself. It seems it'll work eventually. So, but I really shouldn't even do that. I should say I'm never going to make another video ever again and oblige some of you to panic and say, what can I do? Because, you know, maybe you need to do more. I mean, it is kind of funny that I allow trolls, essentially, anonymous cowards on the internet, you know, to nag me like they're doing something, you know, spectacular. Like they're doing all this hard work, and somehow I'm the loafer. It is kind of ironic and funny. That it's just another psychological thing, I guess. Some of us are paranoid about failure, and so it's easy to push that button. Get a rise out of us. Such. Anyway, until next time. Yeah, that's enough.